All right, Nahum 2, verse 13. We couldn't quite finish the chapter last week, so maybe we'll do it today. Nahum 2, verse 13. Behold, I am against thee, saith the Lord of hosts, and I will burn her chariots in the smoke, and the sword shall devour thy young lions. I will cut off thy prey from the earth, and the voice of thy messengers shall no more be heard. That is, something has just ended. Nineveh. Still looking for that Apocrypha? Micah chapter, Nahum 2, verse 13. So here he's saying there's going to be a demise of Nineveh. Joshua 11, verse 9. And Joshua did unto them as the Lord bade him. The Lord gets in the killing mood at times, and he's going to destroy. He has to, because he's pure righteousness. And his goal is one day to make everything pure righteousness. So this is what he's done in the past. It says, he hewed their horses and burned their chariots with fire. Now, that's what he did in the past, and that was at the bidding of God. And when he comes back at the second advent, he's going to do more of the same, only on a bigger scale. Look at it in Psalm 46, verse 9. People read this verse as though it's a sweet, happy verse, but they don't understand what's behind it. Psalm 46, verse 9. He maketh wars to cease unto the end of the earth. Now, how can you make a war cease? They're trying to figure that out right now in Israel and Gaza. They can't make it cease. You know how it ceases? When one side gets so powerful and devastates the other side that it's not worth it to fight anymore. That's what God's going to do. He's coming back to rule with a rod of iron. And when his rod strikes, man says, oh, I don't want to fight that. And that's how he'll make the war to cease. He breaketh the bow and cutteth the spear in sunder. He burneth the chariot in the fire. He's going to start a fire. We do a little men's thing, and when it gets wintertime, we'll use a burn pit and burn some steaks out there. There's something about fire that's fascinating. That's because God one day is going to burn it all down and start over. His name is a consuming fire. That's who he is. Nahum 3, verse 1. He says, woe to the bloody city. It is all full of lies and robbery. The prey departeth not. Now that's a bad story right there. The prey, the thing that's getting eaten, is not running. They're not scared. They don't know God the way they should, or they'd be scared of him. He says, it's a bloody city. I don't know that there's any cities now, anywhere in the world, you could say, didn't fit that description. They're all full of blood, through either violence or through abortion. The country is just covered in blood. Now, the land tells off on you. He says the blood cries out from the ground. And it's going to yell at God and say, come repay us and give us some justification for this innocent blood being shed. And one day he's going to. Assyria is the first note in a long line of sadistic, cruel conquerors. Genghis Khan, Hitler, Pol Pot, all those guys, Pharaoh, they're all a warm-up show for the real deal that's to come, the Antichrist. When he gets here, all of the sadistic terrorists who have come before will seem like a walk in the park. Isaiah 17. Isaiah 17:13. The nations shall rush like the rushing of many waters, but God shall rebuke them, and they shall flee far off. That's, I can see the picture. You got water running at you, coming at you, rushing at you. He rebukes it, and it turns around and runs the other way. Now, he can control the water like that. We know he calmed waves, and that's what he's going to do to the nations. Now, he's going to do it devastatingly when he comes back at the second advent. They're going to come after him, and he's going to send them scattering, but they won't be able to run fast enough. Verse 14, and behold, at eventide trouble. I've talked about this before. The whole world lieth in wickedness till now, is what he says in 1 John. That is, there's a great depth above us, and there's a great deep below us. And we're in the pocket in the middle. So we have an even tide. At the evening, when it gets dark, there is a tide. There's times that you feel the wickedness greater than others. Just like you go out there to the Gulf and you step in the water, and there's certain times you can feel the pull a lot more than other times. Even tide. He says, at eventide, behold, at eventide trouble, and before the morning he is not. This is the portion of them that spoil us, and the lot of them that rob us. In the end there is vindication. It's not in us to get it. God's going to do it, and when he does it, nobody can say you did right or you did wrong. I mean, down here we want to get justification, and sometimes God allows it. But usually when a man gets his own justification, pride enters so fast that we don't see what's coming. When God does it, we ain't got to worry about it. Isaiah 24, verse 9. Isaiah 24, verse 9. They shall not drink wine with a song. Now, that is, they're not going to be happy and putting on a party when he decides to drop the bomb himself. I think about what happened over there in Israel. One of the things that they proclaimed was there was a music festival. And the terrorists parachuted in, used gliders, and just destroyed and killed and kidnapped people there. There's something about that that's weird. They're singing and supposedly having a good time. However, it's right on the precipice of disaster. That's these people in this world. And all the singing came to a screeching halt when the big guns showed up. There's something weird about that thing. This has nothing to do with anything, but that thing was postponed, or it was moved. It was supposed to be held in a different location, and they moved it at the last minute. And what's interesting about it to me is none of the singers had any harm. They all made it back just safe and sound. That sounds a little too coincidental. Wouldn't the first thing you do if you're going in there to wreak havoc is shoot everybody on stage? Wouldn't that be the easiest target? They got out scot-free. Seems a little odd to me. He says, verse 10, the city of confusion is broken down. I know Americans don't think that they have confusion, but by and large in America they have confusion. When you think there's 35 different sects, that's confusion. I mean, what they used to accept as science, they no longer accept as science, and then they tell you to follow the science. What, in a circle? That's confusion. The city of confusion is broken down. Every house is shut up. No man may come in. There is a crying for wine in the streets. All joy is darkened. The mirth of the land is gone. That is, there's no more happy good times. It's all ceased. In Ezekiel 22, verse 1. Ezekiel 22, verse 1. Moreover, the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Now thou son of man. I like how he starts that. Usually it starts without that first word there. It usually starts with, Son of man, take up a lamentation, or take the burden of so-and-so. He says now, as though there's an urgency to it. Now, thou son of man, wilt thou judge the bloody city? Yea, thou shalt show her all her abominations. That is, God says, go out there and show them. Now, don't you think they already know their abominations? Sure. They know what they're doing. They might not. There might be a handful that don't realize that's an abomination before God. But by and large, they know it, and they don't care. God didn't say, if they want to hear it, show them their abomination. He said, no, you go show them. That's a direct command between God and Ezekiel. Verse 3. Then say thou, thus saith the Lord God, the city sheddeth blood in the midst of it, and her time may come, and maketh idols against herself to defile herself. He said they're making idols against themselves. Now they think they're making an idol to protect them. You know, a lucky charm, a lucky rabbit's foot that's going to bring them good luck. He says, no, it's just the opposite. There's something about trinkets. You get into the satanic realm and they all have trinkets. You have to have symbols and signs and mementos because they're counting on those things as protection. They have to have a lucky crystal. And each color means something different. It's this right here. They're using idols, and God says it's cursing them. Does just the opposite of what they think. Yeah. And that's how they start it with the kids. They start with the rocks and the different colored rocks, and aren't they pretty? And they mean something, and you can trade them, and wickedness. Ezekiel 24, verse 6. Wherefore, thus saith the Lord God, woe to the bloody city. There's something about this blood and a city that God can't stand all the way through the Bible. It doesn't end until he destroys Mystery Babylon. But that's, you keep getting hints of it, and he'll talk about a city being a bloody city, and then he'll wipe it off the earth. And then he'll talk about another city being a bloody city and wipe it off the earth. It's so we can see what's coming. Woe unto the bloody city, the pot whose scum is therein, and whose scum is not gone out of it. Bring it out piece by piece. Let no lot fall upon it, for her blood is in the midst of her. She set it upon the top of a rock. She poured it not upon the ground to cover it with dust, that it might cause fury to come up to take vengeance. God says, I'm watching what's going on down there. Remember, he told them, when you go out to relieve yourself in the camp, talking about the children of Israel, you have to carry a paddle on the end of your utensil so that you can cover it like a cat does. He says, because I'm the Lord your God and I walk in the midst of you. Therefore, keep it clean. He's saying right here, they're doing things publicly, and that makes him mad. His fury is raging against that. Imagine the mess he's seeing right now. We want him to bless America and walk in America. Well, he can't with the mess that's going on now. Now, he's in us, so we ain't got to worry about that part. But literally, he's got to have fury coming up into his nostrils nonstop. And America's a good country. I'm not trying to down America. But if America's going down this fast, imagine what the rest of the world looks like. I have set her blood upon the top of a rock, that it should not be covered. Therefore, thus saith the Lord God, woe to the bloody city. I will even make the pile for fire great. What it deserves is to be burned. Burning was a judgment used in the Bible. You remember when, Judah went into what he thought was a harlot, but it was not. And the word came to him, hey, is it a sister-in-law? Daughter-in-law. Your daughter-in-law. Yeah, is pregnant. And he says, bring her out and let her be burned. That was the proper judgment for it. You know what happens when a sinner dies without Christ? They're going to burn. And it doesn't end. Hosea 4 verse 2. Hosea 4:2. Well, Kelly's here tonight, so I'm going to reteach Hosea. Hosea 4:2. By swearing and lying and killing. Now, we don't see the same priority list as that. Somebody tells a lie, that's not on the same level as killing. Obviously it is. To God, He put it in the same list. Ouch. But I would say lying is worse than the first one, by swearing. You know, you can't listen to much conversation anymore without that going on. Swearing. I'm talking about the Christians. Outside of church, I don't know, they might be doing it in church too, I don't know, but outside of church, that's a normal way of speaking nowadays. God's putting it in the same list. He says, and stealing and committing adultery, they break out, and blood toucheth blood. That is, it's become a flood. One person starts it over here, and then another one over here, and pretty soon it's taken over. Blood touching blood. It's just a flood. Naham 3, verse 2. Nahum 3, verse 2. The noise of a whip. That's what our kids would have said. No. The noise of a whip. And the noise of rattling of the wheels. And the prancing horses. And jumping chariots. Now, he's saying there's a bunch of movement going on here. Verse 3, the horseman lifteth up both the bright sword and glittering spear. There is a multitude of slain, and a great number of carcasses. There is none end of their corpses. They stumble upon their corpses. He says this is a huge slaughter. Now this is Nineveh. He's taking it out. Remember when Jonah showed up to town the first time. He says 40 days and Nineveh shall be destroyed. This is the destruction that it was promised way back then. Now, they got right. Matter of fact, they made their animals get right. He said you put sackcloth and ashes on your animals. Okay, that's wanting to get right real hard. But it wasn't a couple of 100 years later, and they're back at the same old mess again. And now they get it. Job 39. Nineveh. No. Syrians. Job 39. Job 39, 22. Job 39, 22. Who is this talking about? Behemoth? Job 39, 22. He mocketh at fear, and is not frightened. Neither turneth he back from the sword. That's the demonic forces that are out there, the principalities and powers of the air. They are not afraid of what we should be afraid of. Is it something else, Chris?
You meant 22, right?
Yes, 39, 22.
It's the horse.
Okay. What we're afraid of should be on a different level because we're weaker. We're not as strong as the principalities and powers. We're a little lower than the angels. Therefore, our fear should be on a higher level. But you know what they've done? They've jaded people's minds. Even girls are liking horror shows now. And snakes. And things that would have never appealed to a female before. That's because they're trying to get them acceptable to their master. Their master's not afraid of anything. And he's doing that on purpose because one day great fear is going to show up at the second advent, and he doesn't want them running. So he's trying to get them accustomed to all of this wickedness and overcome fears. You know, there's some fear that's really good. You see those cars ripping up and down this road right here. You ought to be scared to walk out in that street. I'm scared to back out in it or to get around when your husband's back now. I had to edit it out. Verse 23. The quiver rattleth. No, that's right. I did it on purpose. The quiver rattleth against him, the glittering spear and the shield. That is, they used to have war animals. When Alexander the Great was coming up, he was a teenager, and his dad was a horse trader, and there was an Arabian stallion that his dad was trying to trade for, but they decided no one could ride it. They were, he would put his servants on it to, test it. And just because it's big and strong doesn't mean it's worth having if you can't control it. And Alexander the Great said, I can tame it. He's just a teenager. And they were pretty rough back then. His dad let him get on it and take off. Thing could have killed him. But he realized that he was afraid of his shadow. And they were riding it, starting out with his back to the sun. And so he was seeing the shadows. Alexander turned it around and ran it into the sun so it didn't see the shadow. And so then that became some claim to fame. But the fact is this, horses have a different sense of fear too than man. Now, that can be trained or not trained, depending on the breed and the horse and the environment. They have war horses, and that's how you knew a good horse was a war horse, one that could go through all of this turmoil going on around it and do whatever the rider told him to do and not be skittish of it. That's not normal for a horse either. We had horses growing up. Horses are skittish. They'll shy away at a cat or a snake. Of course, I would do a snake too, but a lot of things. And they're thousands of pounds. I mean, why are they scared of something little bitty on the ground? But they should be. You're kind of ready for it when they're going to a creek. I had a cousin. I got to shut up. I'm talking again. I had a cousin who was a big old tough guy, and we were going to go bareback horse riding. And we had a little circuit that we went in, and there's a little creek that would go over. And I don't think he'd ever ridden a horse before, but he was going to do it. And when the horse gets to a creek, you can feel what it's doing. It kind of sets back, and then it leaps. You can feel what it's, especially when you're bareback, you know what's going on with the horse. And he wasn't ready. And he hit the ground, and he wailed and screamed. You could hear it for 3 miles. And that's a crazy thing. Horses have a sense to know what to do and when to do it. That's natural. But men train it out of them for the purpose of war. That's what the devil is doing right now. He's training people to not use their senses. No such thing as common sense anymore. It's uncommon if you got any sense. So uncommon that David went and got all his wisdom taken out. No, he got 2 of them left in there, so he's okay. Verse 24. He swalloweth the ground with fierceness and rage. Neither believeth he that it is the sound of the trumpet. That is, he can ignore the enemy or the reinforcements coming in. He saith among the trumpets, ha, ha, and smelleth the battle afar off, the thunder of the captains and the shouting. Here you're getting the sense he enjoys it. And that's what we're talking about. People's idea of entertainment has changed over the years. And it's just going to keep getting worse. this month especially. I don't know what's playing in the movie theaters, but I'll bet you it's pure wickedness for Halloween. There's nothing spiritually good about Halloween.
Amen.
I don't, that's the devil's holiday. And his people know it. And nobody, not even the Catholics have tried to put a pretty face on that one. You know, and they'll do anything just about, get people in, but they didn't on that one. That one's obvious. And if you start research on it, I'm not going to teach on Halloween tonight, but Samhain is the name of it. That's the Celtic holiday. Isaiah 9 verse 5. When God, Isaiah 9 verse 5. For every battle of the warrior is with confused noise, and garments rolled in blood. But this shall be with burning and fuel of fire. God says, when I come back to destroy Second Advent, I know battle is battle, and they call it the fog of war. You know, you don't know where you are, what's going on. I can picture that. But God says, y'all are going to get used to that. I'm coming down with fire. Now that sounds to me like he's going to set off a super duper nuclear bomb, something better than man has ever come up with. Jeremiah 43. Jeremiah 47 verse 3. At the noise of the stamping of the hoofs of the strong horses, at the rushing of his chariots, at the rumbling of his wheels, the fathers shall not look back to their children for feebleness of hands. That is, they're going to run, and they're going to be so scared and trying to save their own life, they're not going to look back at their children. Now, America is getting more and more jaded, and there's not the natural affection there used to be. But in the Middle East, this is a thing that is unusual. They are very child-oriented. The dad will spoil the kids rotten. It's just the way they are. And I guess all the reprimand belongs to mama. And even the ones that come over here from Syria. You can see the fathers are too lenient with the children. And mama has to crack the whip. But he's saying right here, when I scare them to death, the fathers are going to take off running and forget the children. It's every man for his own self. Ezekiel 39:4. Ezekiel 39:4. Thou shalt fall upon the mountains of Israel, thou and all thy bands, and the people that is with thee. I will give thee unto the ravenous birds of every sort, and to the beasts of the field to be devoured. I think God's mad. He says, I'm going to feed the birds with you. Isn't that what's his name? Goliath told David, I'll feed you to the fowls of the air. I think it goes the other way around. One day God's going to let the fowls of the air have a big banquet. Look at it in Habakkuk. Habakkuk 3, verse 11. Habakkuk 3, verse 11. There's something going on. I don't know that I totally understand it all, but when there's warfare on earth, there's some kind of a duplication of that going on in the heavenlies. You find that in the book of Daniel over and over. There's different principalities and powers, and they're actually fighting up there. Deborah, Judges 5. Here he says, Habakkuk 3:11, the sun and the moon stood still in their habitation, At the light of thine arrows they went, and at the shining of thy glittering spear. Something supernatural that stops the sun and the moon. Revelation 19. Revelation 19, verse 17. If you don't believe the Bible, you have a hard time with some of these passages. Some passages you just read and you say, yes, sir, you can do it. Here's one. Revelation 19, 17. And I saw an angel stand in the sun. Where was he standing? In the sun. That's like the Pollock. They said he came up with a great idea. Everybody's explored the moon so many times he wouldn't want to do that. So he came up with an idea to explore the sun. I said, how are you going to do that? He said, I'm going to go up at night. I saw an angel stand in the sun and cry with a loud voice, saying to all the fowls that fly in the midst of heaven, come, gather yourselves together unto the supper of the great God. Imagine that. He's caring for the animals. We know that. But here, even in Revelation, he says, I'm celebrating that I'm feeding the animals. Now watch what he's going to feed them with, verse 18. That they may eat the flesh of kings, and the flesh of captains, and the flesh of mighty men, and the flesh of horses, and of them that sat on them, and the flesh of all men, both free and bond, small and great. And I saw the beast, and the kings of the earth, and the armies gathered together to make war against him that sat on the horse, and against his army. That's you. And the beast was taken, and with him the false prophet that wrought miracles before him. And with which he deceived them that had received the mark of the beast, and them that worshipped his image. These both were cast alive into the lake of fire, burning with brimstone. We read that story, and we think, good, he finally put it in there. The conclusion, the bad guy goes down. You know why we have that statement? It's simply because it's connected to him feeding some birds. That's the context to the passage, is I'm feeding birds. Here's what they need to eat. Wow. Yeah. Naham 3, verse 4. You got a roach up there? I can't reach that one. Naham 3, 4. That's a palmetto. They taste pretty good. They're a little crunchy. Yeah. I like the snap they make when you step on them. Nahum 3, 4. Because of the multitude of the whoredoms of the well-favored harlot, the mistress of witchcrafts, that selleth nations through her whoredoms, and families through her witchcraft. That is, witchcraft is on the rise, because that's the way it ends. It's always been a thing that comes and goes. Worshiping idols goes hand in hand with that witchcraft thing. It's more and more coming out nowadays. There is a bakery just down the street here called Kraft. Yeah, they've not read the Bible to use that name, that's for sure. That's what the Antichrist does. He shows up and makes craft to increase. That's witchcraft. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. And this section is going to run too long. We better cut it off there. I don't know what time we're at. Oh, yeah, we're at time. I'm getting hungry. We got to stop this so I can get that oven heated up. Right. Oh, I know.
Yeah, they come out. They can come out of nowhere.
I don't mind the big ones. The big ones are not too bad, but if you get the little ones, those things will infest your place immediately.
And they say boxes is one, like my bug man says the boxes are the worst. And
Oh.
paperback